audible? Any one of you can say.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Audible.
Fine. So I will just initially my plan was to take you through certain hands-on because just going through certain theoretical perspective won't you know help and it won't be very justifiable, particularly for the research scholar. So I have particularly divided my entire session into halves. One is, but although it has been divided into two sections, but those two sections will run parallelly. So I have a very small presentation, and alongside the presentation, I will just go through the hands-on sessions. And probably you have seen the entire schedule where it has been categorically mentioned that I will be dealing with particularly the qualitative data analysis because I have gone through the entire schedule and I saw that the entire schedule is heavily packed with the quantitative aspects. Okay, so the rest of the resource persons will be taking care of that. But the qualitative data analysis recently have emerged as a more scientific kind of data analysis, and we do not approach qualitative data analysis in the same way that we used to approach, say, even 10 years before. And this is possible only because we have a number of tools and supportive, technical platforms or technological support with the help of which this has been possible. So one of the biggest lacuna or one of the biggest drawbacks of the qualitative data analysis earlier was the visualization of the output, and which has been taken care of by a number of softwares, a number of application tools, a number of networking tools, with the help of which we can now have a proper visualization of our data. This is number one. Number two, when we are going for a manual data analysis, because the nature of the qualitative data is such that it requires a very thorough scrutinization before you make any kind of interpretation about that. So classification, sorting, and clustering, these three activities are nicely done by the technological support nowadays. So initially we had to rely on our own we can say the researcher's own acumen or researcher's own brain involvement while sorting and analyzing, classifying and clustering those data inputs. And thirdly, why the qualitative data analysis have become so very important these days, and that is because of the web-based activities. Okay, so say for example, I will give you two examples which will be sufficient enough to understand the amount of web-based activity that we are involved in day-to-day life. Say for example, the social media, that is number one. So while interacting on various social media platforms, we generate a huge amount of data, both in textual formats, in video formats, in graphical images, etc. So we generate and share a huge amount of content in the form of text, in the form of graphics, in the form of motion graphics, etc. And the amount of our involvement in the e-commerce platforms. So if I visit, say, Amazon, if I visit, say, Flipkart, or if I visit any other e-commerce platform, even for the entertainment purpose, when you are actually engaging yourself while accessing, say, Netflix or YouTube, you are unknowingly or knowingly generating a huge amount of data. And these data are unstructured in nature, very abstract in nature, very subjective in nature, but these data can provide you with the insights about the person or the group of people who are actually interacting with these platforms. Okay, so probably you have heard about this thing, and one of the examples you can easily realize, even without entering into the data analysis, you will realize the back-end analysis process is always going on. Suppose this is our experience. So I'm sure that everybody will be having a similar kind of experience. Suppose you are purchasing something from any e-commerce platform. It may be Amazon, it may be Flipkart, or you are accessing YouTube or Netflix and trying to find out a certain entertainment program which suits your taste. Okay, so after a few search, you will find that both the e-commerce platform and the entertainment platform are providing you with certain recommendations that since you are searching this, you are most likely to have a look into this group of products or cluster of products or a group of entertainment series or whatever it is. So initially we had the concept of a search engine. So we used to type in the Google or whatever search engine we are using, and we used to find out our desired or required information. So now what has happened, the moment you are searching something, the engine is also profiling you to prepare a recommendation pool for you. So the search engine nowadays is not only restricted for searching activities only, it is also a recommendation engine for you. And this recommendation engine is working on the basis of the general analysis of all the qualitative data inputs that is coming from your end or from the interaction between you and your immediate social group. So therefore, the analysis of this, the moment you were interacting with certain virtual platforms and sharing content or entering into any kind of transaction, it will be converted into a very useful data. Okay, although those data are very raw in nature, and they are supposed to have a lot of impurities, and for a researcher it is only but imperative that those data should be filtered and those data should be converted into a usable data. So qualitative data analysis these days are very interesting because probably you have heard about two different kinds of research. One is a deductive and one is an inductive. Frankly speaking, what we are doing day in and day out as academic researchers are deductive research. So we just hang on to a theory which is well established. We search for the variables which are already studied. So we enter into a prolonged and a very, very elaborative kind of a literature review. And then we try to find out certain gaps in terms of certain contexts. Okay, we try to contextualize the variables, and then we try to find out whether some missing contexts are there. Okay, so on the basis of certain theory or theoretical foundation or a network of theory or presence of certain variables which are not studied previously in certain context, we try to frame our research problem, we try to frame our research question, then formulate the research objective, the hypothesis, the theoretical model or the default model, and then we go on for testing of the hypothesis. So this is very deductive in nature, whereby your entire research is solidly grounded on existing theory. So deductive research will not end up in developing a new theory or proposing something very novel to the research community. You will add to the existing body of knowledge, but it will be very contextual. Okay, so if somebody is using a service quality scale which has been developed by some researcher in 1985 or 1988, and has been subsequently revised over the period of 1992, 1993, 2001, 2005. If you are using that same scale and try to identify whether there has been any change in the perception of service quality during the COVID-19 times, and you suddenly find out, okay, there is an additional variable called risk perception, which can be which can be used to perceive quality. that is only a context. The context or the perspective is a pandemic. You are not developing a whole new scale. You are using the same parameters or the same scale items that was devised in 1985 and were subsequently revised. So this is generally the nature of the deductive research. And on the other hand, if we see the inductive research basically they try to develop the theory. And most of the qualitative work or the subjective work which try to gather insight and explanation to newer things, they are behind these development of or the progression of this inductive kind of research. And that's why qualitative research has gained so much of importance. If you make a comparison between the research papers which are coming out from good universities from outside India, and if you are trying to compare with the best papers which are coming out from the Indian universities or the premier institutes, you will find that there is a heavy alignment towards qualitative research papers in the foreign universities. And particularly some of the publishers, like for example, I can give you one example immediately, like Sage publisher, they won't be accepting any quantitative based research paper. They have a number of journals which only endorse the qualitative papers. So that particular publisher is heavily aligned towards producing certain research papers or publishing research papers which tend to pursue inductive research process. But there is a catch over here, that the academic researchers who are pursuing our PhD or doctoral degree, we have a number of constraints, and for an inductive research work you require plenty of time. So we have a time constraint, we have a cost constraint, so most of our research work is funneled towards this inductive research work only. Okay, so without wasting time, just give me 1 minute to share my screen so that we can start the presentation and we can take it up from there. Just tell me whether the screen is visible or not.
Yes, it is visible.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we will be focusing on qualitative data analysis, and today we will take a look into the thematic analysis, the relationship analysis and comparisons. And tomorrow we will take a look into the content analysis, which is the crux of, you can say, the qualitative data analysis these days. But thematic analysis basically is one of the most critical part of qualitative data analysis. So we will be using one software today, and probably there are plenty of softwares that are being used nowadays for qualitative data analysis. Like NVivo is one of the most prolifically used qualitative data analysis software. Then we have MaxQDA. Then we have QDA Minor, then we have Atlas TI, we have Aquad, so a number. So a number of data analysis softwares are there. Now, if you go for other breed of softwares which are based on these softwares, they use a lot of backend algorithms based on R and Python program. There are other softwares which can be used for advanced analytics. Like there is a support software called Orange, which is again a Python-based software, Python-based application, which uses different widgets. Okay, and probably you have also seen IBM SPSS modeler. Okay, not the SPSS, the traditional SPSS or IBM SPSS that we normally use, the modular function, which is used for predictive analytics. So that That is also an important analytical tool that we are using these days for text analytics. One of the major analysis that we go through day in and day out these days is the social networking analysis, or the SNA. SNA can be done by using two open source application. One is Jeffy, and the second one is Cytoscope. You can use a RapidMiner also, which uses again the backend Python algorithm for that social network analysis. So there are many tools which are available, and we have a number of tools which are open source in nature. So even if you are not going for any proprietary kind of application, because those are pretty costly, you can use the open source softwares or open source application tools to analyze the qualitative data. Aquad, AQUAD, Aquad is one of the open source qualitative data analysis platform. You can download it and you can use it. There is a light version of QDA Miner, which is absolutely free, which is QDA Miner Lite. You go to their website, you can download and use it. Today we will just use one of these softwares, which is Atlas TI, and tomorrow I will be using the QDA Miner. If I get time tomorrow, I will show certain analysis with the help of Orange also. So without wasting any time, let us go to the presentation. I will take you through this presentation pretty quickly. So we need to understand the basic premises of analysis. Now, when we talk about the analysis, the basic objective is what the researcher looks into the raw data and ask what does all this mean. Okay, so if it is a qualitative data, then it is much more complex and critical job in our hand, because by its abstract and subjective nature, it becomes very difficult to interpret. And one interesting thing about qualitative data is, since it is not numerical in nature, because you see, where comes the basic difference? If I provide you with a data set, a numerical data set, to 5 research scholars, and ask them to perform regression analysis or correlation or any kind of multivariate or bivariate kind of an analysis, the same results will come. It will not. So if I'm using the same data set across various researchers, and if I am working on the same analysis, the same outputs will be received. So basically, the researcher's involvement, or the researcher's mind involvement or brain involvement or thought process is not associated with the quantitative kind of research. In most of the cases, what happens, the machine takes over and then the entire analysis is done. So what you need to ensure is to provide with a qualified data set. Okay, so you need to check certain normality issues or linearity issues. You can check those things and provide it for the analysis. So if you are going for an interdependence technique like factor analysis, you need to check the normality of the data or the linearity of the data, then put on this entire thing. But the point is, if I provide the same data set across, say, 5 to 10 research scholars, the output will be same, interpretation will be same. So when it comes to researchers' own involvement with the data, the thought process with the data, the quantitative data set provides you with very limited option. Okay, they have a very stereotypical or a very pre-formatted kind of report. You need to report this. So if you are getting a regression analysis output, I need to report the ANOVA result. I need to report the coefficient regression, the regression coefficients. I need to report the F result, the T results, the beta coefficients, the significance level, the R square, particularly how much variability it explains. So these are standardized kind of report. And if the same data set is accessed by a number of researchers, the same results will come and the same report will be published. But in case of a qualitative data, since everything is very subjective, very abstract in nature, Here comes the researcher's own thought process, researcher's own interpretation. And very interestingly, the qualitative data interpretation may differ from one particular researcher to another. It's simply because how you are thinking, how you are visualizing, how you are perceiving that particular data, and with what you are actually contextualizing, with what you are connecting. So, what does this all mean? So, we have a number of researchers who have explained this basic premise of analysis. So, if we go back to the 1990s, later half of the 1990s, Morgan and Kruger in 1997, they observed that tools used for analysis and reporting should not be left unexamined and should be scrutinized in the early stages of the research process. So, whatever tools you are using for analysis, that should synchronize with the data within your hand. So 5 years later, Robson in 2002, he observed that before we can interpret our findings, the messages that lie within the data need careful teasing out. So, apart from what Robson was particularly suggesting, that apart from the very explicit kind of output that is very obvious, because if we are providing certain input to a software, the software is bound to provide certain outputs. Okay, so those are very explicit results. But what are the implicit kind of implications of those results, and how we can actually connect it with our observations, with our predictions, with our conclusions that the researcher is drawing, and that's very important. So there may be many hidden or covert layers. In other words, we can say there can be many latent issues which data offers us. But unfortunately, in case of totally numerical data, this is very restricted. But you go for qualitative data, there can be a number of implicit issues or hidden issues. So, on a very contemporary note, Blair said that the answers obtainable from the data, which is the basic premise of the analysis, but they are not always explicit. So, it is almost a support to what Robson said in 2002. Now, the data analysis that we talk about very often, it can have two extremities. On one hand, it can be fully manual that we used to do, uh, fully manual, say during the 1970s or during the 1980s, 1990s, a good portion of even in the new millennium. We used to have these fully manual kind of data. So if I am having a fully manual kind of data, so what basically I am trying to find out over here, if I am having fully manual, so I'm trying to find out whether it is important for me, whether this particular data is important, whether it is interesting for me, and whether it is meaningful for me. Okay, so when I'm going for a manual analysis of data, particularly we are talking about the qualitative data. So we are focusing on the importance of that data, importance in the context of the research in our hand. Probably we are more aligned towards our research questions and associated research problem and the research objectives in our hand, because in most of the cases the qualitative research, they do not have any kind of a hypothesis support. So the importance of the data, whether the data is very interesting, that means it provides certain new insights, or it is very meaningful in nature, what exactly the data means for us. So when we go for manual inspection of qualitative data, the involvement of researchers' own thought process, the researchers' own interpretation, perception, analysis of the data, how the researcher is looking into the data, that becomes very important. Okay, so a fully manual process will look for the importance or the significance in the data set, the interesting part of that particular data, and the hidden meanings or the latent meanings that the data provide. Now, if we come to the other hand, which is to the other extreme, which is called fully automated. So here we have all the applications, all the softwares, all the technology which are being used over here. So they are basically used for sorting the data, for grouping the data or clustering the data, for classifying the data, etc., for networking, okay, and then for visualization. So these are the issues, or these are the qualities, these are the tasks that are best done by an automated system. So the question obviously which can be placed over here, that which one to be followed. So in data analysis, and particularly if it is a qualitative data analysis, we normally recommend a hybridization of both this, because if the researcher's own interpretation, perception, and inputs are not there, then obviously these things which are machine supervised in nature, they will be absolutely meaningless. So for example, suppose you are going through a case study or a focus group interview, which is actually a data, or you are seeing a video, or you are analyzing certain graphical images, and then it's your own interpretation, own concept about these data inputs, which needs to be assigned as a code. Okay, or you need to identify those segments within these data set, which are very meaningful, which are very important, and which are very interesting. So here, the researcher's contribution becomes very important. Now, how the software will help you? The software will actually classify all these interpretations of the researcher. They will cluster it, and then they will try to form a network, develop any kind of theme, any kind of unified theory that will be helped out by the this automated process, or the softwares, or the applications that are being used. So if your goal is for explanation, if you are going for any explanation, or if you are looking for any insights, you have to depend on your own interpretations and your own research acumen and capability to interpret data. And if you are interested about developing a network, you are interested to develop a concept map, you are interested to develop a cohort theory, then probably this fully automated process will help you. So what will be your analysis goal? That has to be determined first. You need to identify newer explanation or newer insights from a given data set. Then probably your manual process will help you, and then the automated process will help you to justify all these things in the form of certain visual representation. So again, we fall back into something which we call kind of hybridization between a fully manual kind of operation and fully automated. Okay, so we recommend, particularly for qualitative data analysis, the involvement of the researcher is of primary importance. And what the qualitative data analysis software will do, they will only give you the support. And they will help you in visualizing, they will help you in networking, they will help you arranging all the codes and memos and notes for you. They will classify, they will cluster, they will sort, etc. They will do it for you, but the inputs basically will come from the researcher. Now, when we talk about types of data analysis, either it can be descriptive or theoretical. In case of a descriptive data analysis, it makes the complicated things understandable by reducing them into smaller parts or components. And when we speak about a theoretical data analysis, that it makes complicated things understandable by showing how their parts fit together according to some certain rules. So if you are having a standard rule or a benchmark or a theory against which you are conducting a research, then probably your analysis will have to find support from the pre-existing benchmarked or standardized theory. So these are the two major types of data analysis that we use in our day-to-day research. Now let us look into the basic components of the analysis. So this is as far as Connor and Gibson in 2003 they have observed, and they have proposed this kind of a flow chart whereby they are saying that the analysis of the data starts from organizing the data, then finding and organizing the ideas and the concepts, building the overarching themes in the data. So over here, actually, our analysis comes very handy. The analysis, the thematic analysis. Okay, so because we need to find out what is the theme that is being developed from a number of qualitative data inputs. Then ensuring the reliability and validity in the data analysis and findings, which is more applicable for quantitative data because they have their own validity and reliability protocols which are to be followed. Then finding possible and plausible explanations for findings. That means our themes that we will be developing will be used here for justifying our interpretations and findings. And then we need to propose a certain, either if it is a purely inductive research, then we need to propose a theory or a theoretical perspective if we are going for a very quasi kind of a qualitative research. So the process of analysis can be divided or segregated into primarily three activities. The first one is basically the descriptive one, the description of the data set. Then the classification of the data or the grouping of the data. Then we try to find out the interconnections between the data. So I'm not going into the details of this thing. I will share the slide with you. Now, just going on straight to the thematic analysis, which is our main focus for today's session. So thematic analysis basically is a method of identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns or themes within the data. Okay, so this is, I will share this document with you, which has been written by Braun and Clark in 2006. This is a seminal document, and all the researchers who want to conduct qualitative research, they should read this. So once again, thematic analysis is a method of identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns. Okay, patterns within the data. So what we are getting from this particular definition is, suppose we have a number of inputs, qualitative data inputs. Say a particular researcher has conducted, say, 10 case studies and 10 focus group interviews and 10 key informant interviews. So he or she is having 10 plus 10 plus 10, almost 30 qualitative data inputs. So now he or she would like to find out what is the emerging pattern within all those data inputs. Okay, so what is that particular issue or that particular phenomena or that particular you can say thing that binds all these data inputs together. So basically the researcher is trying to find out what is the overall picture that is emerging from this particular data set. So can I identify certain similarity of patterns so that they can be grouped into one, or there is a uniform pattern throughout all the data inputs which can be easily interpreted and converted and connected to a theory, or can be developed into a theory altogether. Now, one of the benefits of thematic analysis is its flexibility. Okay, the qualitative, the analytic methods can be, we can roughly divide qualitative analytics into two categories. One, is one category which are tied to or are stemming from a particular theoretical, or you can say epistemological position. Okay, so that is one. For some of these, such as for example the conversation analysis, or you have heard about the IPA, the interpretative phenomenological analysis. For these kind of analysis, the qualitative data analysis technique that we normally use, they have a lot of limitation and they are not flexible at all. Okay, so the traditional or the conventional analytical qualitative data analysis process that we used to have for these kind of analysis, particularly for the IPA and the epistemological surveys, which is strictly grounded on theories, are not that flexible in nature. But if we uh, over the other areas, like the areas which are supported by grounded theory, or the areas which use discourse analysis or the narrative analysis, there the application of the thematic analysis as a flexible analytical tool has been well established and well accepted within the entire research fraternity. This is number one in terms of the flexibility of thematic analysis. The second issue is there are methods that are essentially independent of theory and epistemology, because if I strongly ground my research on epistemology, that means I have a very strong theoretical background to fall back on. Okay, so if there are methods that are essentially independent of epistemology or a theoretical grounding, and can be applied across a range of theoretical and epistemological approaches. Say, for example, it can be framed as an experiential component or an experiential process. The thematic analysis is actually, you can say, firmly helping in developing the framework rather than just, focusing on the experiential issues. Okay, so if I am having my research grounded on certain theories, it limits me only in identifying the experiential issues in the context of certain social phenomena, social activities, etc. But if I broaden the scope and try to incorporate the entire framework, and I try to be extremely flexible in analyzing that entire framework, irrespective of whatever theory from which the framework is evolving, the thematic analysis provides me with enough independence to analyze that data, cut across the data, and try to find out all the hidden layers or the covert layers or the latent layers that we were discussing a few minutes back, all the implicit implications of the data. So that is one of the big advantages of thematic analysis. Now, there are certain phases. This has also been identified by Brown and Clark. Basically, the thematic analysis has been identified on the basis of 6 phases. The first one is familiarizing yourself with the data. This is a theoretical part. You can read it once I share the slide. Then generating the initial codes, and you will come across this particular terminology called codes very often when we are doing qualitative data analysis. So from the qualitative data analysis perspective, these codes are very important. Okay. Then comes reviewing the themes. After generating the initial codes, we are searching for the themes. Basically, the themes will be a network of codes. So how the codes are aligned with each other, in relationship with each other, that will develop the initial theme. Then we need to review those themes, whether it can be contextualized, defining and naming of the themes. And here comes our findings and interpretation, and then we are producing it in the form of a report. So if we are trying to present thematic analysis with the help of a flowchart, we can do so. The first thing is to go for all the documents. sorting of all the documents or input of all the documents. That's the first thing that we need to do. Then comes the quotations. I will just tell you what quotations are. Then codification of the quotations, then development of the themes, and last of all, when we are trying to represent the results, we fall back on the networks. And networks basically will ensure what kind of pattern is developed. Okay, so let us take a look into what are the various sources of documents for the qualitative research. I will show you a number of sources, but normally we use, if you see examples of sources of qualitative data, we use certain surveys. Surveys, actually, we should not say it's surveys, actually, it will be interviews, the focus group discussions, it can be videos, it can be audios, it can be journal papers, it can be geolocations, any kind of map, pictures, it can be social media input, as I have told you, any kind of social media input or e-commerce input. It can be Google Earth geolocation, or geological snapshots, anything, field notes of the researchers, any kind of input that we can bring in from our smart referencing manager, particularly say EndNote or Evernote. We can bring it from Zotero, we can bring it from Mendeley. Okay, so there can be a wide range of documents which can provide us with qualitative data inputs, but particularly for a qualitative researcher or a researcher who is performing qualitative data analysis, a few things are very common for them, like the FGD, the focus group discussion. This is one of the most critical data input for qualitative data analysis. Case studies, okay, then interviews. It can be in-depth interviews, it can be scheduled interviews, then key informants, information gathered or interviews of the key informants. That's very important. Any kind of videos or documentaries that are associated with the cases, any kind of graphical images which are associated with the cases, or which are associated with the focus group interviews, or which are associated with the interviews. You can have the entire video interviews, or the video file of the interviews, or the audio file of the interviews. Whatever form of data you want to incorporate for uh, the the qualitative data. So for social media, suppose someone is trying to gather information about public sentiment on the basis of Twitter. Okay, so this Twitter handles are one of the prolific sources of sentiment analysis or emotion analysis which is being conducted, and probably you also have an idea that public sentiments, particularly with I can give you the latest example, say with regard to election, or with regard to exit polls. A number of Twitter handles can be used, and the sentiments can be analyzed in the form of neutral, positive, or negative. So all these data sources are pretty important for qualitative data. So these are the document sources that we normally speak about. Now, I told you that once we have access to all the data, or once the researcher has collected all the data, the next thing is to identify the quotations. Now here, I told you that I will be explaining what quotation is. Very simply putting, quotation is a segment within a document perceived to be a critical input for analysis. Okay, so let me just show you one, say, document. Say, for example, if I can show you one of my own papers. Say this is, although this is more apt for literature review, but for please try to understand the technicality of this. Suppose this is a case study. Okay, and in this particular case study, going through this case study very thoroughly, the researcher has identified a particular part of the case study which is very important. Okay, and he or she needs to highlight that particular part, and that part is a very critical input for the entire research findings or entire research analysis. Say, for example, I, as a researcher, feel that this particular part of the document or the data, qualitative data, is very important for me. So I can easily highlight this particular part. Okay, so this particular part has been highlighted, and this is a segment of this entire data. Okay, now this highlighted part or this selected segment of the entire data is called the quotation. Okay, now every quotation that is identified by the researcher or by the scholar is supposed to be coded. Okay, so if I have selected this particular part for certain analysis, which I feel is very important in the context of my study or in the context of the research problem that I'm having in my hand, or in the context of the research objective that I'm trying to pursue, this particular part of the data is very critical. So I have actually identified this part, I have highlighted this part. That means I have identified a segment of my data input, I have color coded it, and then I can put a code for this particular quotation, because this is an entire paragraph, almost half of the paragraph. It can be so that an entire paragraph can be a particular quotation if you feel that the entire paragraph is very critical for the scholar. So you need to put certain code for this. So let us move on to the next step. So you have probably understood what quotation is. A quotation is a segment within a document. Here you should read the document as a data. Okay, because in case of qualitative data, or the data are almost like documents. If it is a MS Word document or a PDF document, whatever it is, it's basically within a data. Okay, so a quotation is a segment within a data perceived to be a very critical input for overall analysis. So we need to identify that particular part or segment of the entire data. And the next thing that we do is, if you see the flow chart again, the next thing we do is to code that particular segment or that particular quotation. So we enter into the coding process, and this is the most, you can say, elaborate process, most painstaking process for any scholar who is doing qualitative research or qualitative data analysis. One thing you must agree with me, that irrespective of the fact that our data analysis, whether it is based on quantitative techniques or qualitative technique, all the researchers at some point of their research, they conduct a qualitative data analysis, because your research literature review itself is a qualitative data analysis process. Okay, so when you are studying so much of literature, basically you are actually accessing a lot of qualitative data input. And then for the literature review also, what you are doing, you are preparing the index cards. Probably you have gone through the literature review process in this workshop, that in literature review, normally we go through a process of reviewing the literature, which is called an index card preparation. Okay, that's the manual process. But nowadays we have online, or a you can say internet based or technology supported content summarizer, online content summarizer, you can say. So a number of flashcards can be prepared, with the help of which we can summarize the entire literature input, and we can actually use the number of summaries from a number of literature inputs to prepare our own literature. So when we are actually analyzing the literature, it is almost like conducting a qualitative data analysis. So in the literature review also, probably you have done this, that there has to be a lot of coding, a lot of manual coding is being done. Now, if I can show you one thing. then you will understand. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. See, this is the same paper that I was showing you, but in this particular paper, I will show you how the codifications and how the tagging of the different parts, how the segments have been chosen, and how important terminologies have been identified, which may be very critical inputs for my overall literature. This is an example of the literature review, but the same thing is basically replicated when it comes to coding qualitative data. So this is a manual process, and every qualitative data analysis, when it is at the coding stage, or when there are certain associated memos are being attached with the code, or certain additional notes or comments are associated with the codes, it's basically the manual process. So here it is a very painstaking job. It is a very laborious job, and you need to go through each and every paper very thoroughly when you are doing your literature review. And similarly, when you are going through your case studies or focus group discussions or the key informant interviews or the scheduled interviews or any kind of video documentary as a data input, you need to go through all these very minutely, and then you need to apply your own mind. That there comes the manual or the human involvement in the research. You need to identify what does this particular segment speaks about. Okay, and then you put a specific code along this. You need to identify the specific segments in the data, and you need to put forward these codes. Now, earlier what used to happen, the entire thing actually concludes right at this phase only, in the manual coding, manual memoing, manual analysis only. So what technology, and I was just referring to that what technology has done, you can actually take this entire thing on the virtual platform, on the electronic platform, but you have to type out all these codes, etc. What the machine or the algorithm or the software will do, they will take over for the rest part, like sorting the thing, like clustering the thing, classifying the thing, networking the thing, contextualizing the thing, giving you a number of co-occurrences table, like the correlation matrix that we used to have the quantitative analysis, like that. Okay, so probably you have understood how the coding can be done. If you consider it as a qualitative data input, suppose this is a case study which I am using for qualitative data analysis. The first thing the researcher has to do is to go through this entire document very thoroughly and try to identify the basic segments which are very critical for their data analysis, or for further analysis. And those particular segments should be highlighted, those particular segments should be selected, and an actual code should be assigned to those segments for further analysis. So let us get back to our presentation. So basically, what is coding? Codings are basically tags or labels for assigning units. So codes can be a theme, codes can be a topic, codes can be a concept, codes can be certain observations made by the research scholar. Codes can be identified behavioral pattern. If you are studying certain consumer behavior or psychological behavior or any kind of behavioral pattern you want to identify that is taking place. Then codes can be certain idea. Codes can be certain attitude represented through that particular quotation. It can be a phrase, it can be a keyword, anything that helps the researcher contextualize that particular segment of the data with his or her research objective and research problem. So Coding refers to the process of organizing and sorting the data. And coding, basically, this third element is quite important. The coding digs out the broad themes from a pool of data to the surface. That's very important. So the moment you engage in the coding process, you are engaging as a miner. You are mining the data and trying to find out all the hidden, messages that lies within the body of the qualitative data. So the researchers must search for the key ideas that I have told you: issues, components, events, incidents in the data, and the labels must be very flexible to integrate as and when required. So when you are putting certain codes, when you are assigning certain codes, those codes should be flexible enough so that they can be merged or they can be split up if required at a later phase. So it's better that whenever you are writing code, try to assign a small editing note, or try to assign a memo with that particular code. I will just explain what memo is. And talking about the codes, normally we have three different kinds of codes, because three different kinds of codifications are required for three different stages of analysis. So we have an open coding process at the preliminary stage. At the preliminary stage, we are going for searching for the key ideas or the issues, the components, the events and incidents in the data. So we are trying out what are the hidden messages in the data, and then we are coding the segments or the quotations that we are selecting. And here we are assigning the codes with a degree of flexibility so that in future we can merge two or more codes together, or we can split one codes into two or more codes. The next phase is the theme development phase, or the thematic stage, which is called the axial coding. In this particular stage, the coding process examines the initial codes and they try to establish the connections. Now, here comes, in case of this thematic stage, the contribution of the qualitative data analysis software is predominant. Okay, so when you are connecting the codes, interconnection between the codes or co-occurrences of the codes, okay, so these are helped out in terms of its visibility or visualization with the help of these QDS, or the qualitative data analysis softwares. So in axial coding, what we are supposed to do, we are clubbing the codes into clusters, or normally we call them the code groups. And these are done as per the various emerging themes. As we mine for the codes, you will find as a scholar that the themes will start to emerge across the various data sets. Okay, so as a researcher, you are handling multiple number of data. Okay, so you have, say, for example, 10 case studies, 10 focus group discussions, 10 videographies, 10 graphical images, 10 key informant interviews. So you have a number of data inputs, and as you dig through those data, you will find gradually, as you start clustering and clubbing the codes, the hidden themes will start to surface. And in the last phase of coding, when we go for very selective kind of coding, this particular stage is basically, we can refer it to as a stage of generalization. We try to summarize and aggregate everything, whatever we done in the last two stages, or the preliminary stages, or the thematic stage. We try to generalize the entire thing. So the analytical categories are drawn from the codes, and then we try to identify the data that supports the conceptual category. So we are trying to link with what our objective was. We started with the conceptual categories that we have created when we have framed our research objectives, and the data that has emerged, the theme that has emerged from this particular data, whether it supports the conceptual category. So this is the last stage of the coding, where we try to match between our conceptual categories and the emerging themes. Say, for example, this is just an example to elaborate. Say, one of the questions, say this is an interview question. Probably you can ask. Say you are asking to interviewee that what was your perception about COVID-19 when you heard it for the first time in the month of January and February 2020? And I have 5 responses of over here. So from 5 interviewees, and there's one is saying that I was sure that it would not be a big issue for India. Okay, so if you are having this kind of a response and certain uh, other elaborations along with this, you can tag it with an initial code. Say it is the person is having certain geographical biasness. Okay, this is a possible code, and you can put an additional note also. What additional note you can put? They say, for example, the additional note that this is for your own interest, because at the later stage when you will be entering into more detailed analysis of the data, you can just fall back on these additional notes. You need to go back to these additional notes. Why this geographical biasness, or why this particular interviewee is saying that I was sure that it would not be a big issue for India? Is it because of the previous epidemics like SARS or Ebola or Nipah, which did not have a very big issue in India? Whether these are the reasons for which this interviewee is having some kind of a preconceived notion or a preset mind, and that okay, these kind of viral attacks will not be a big issue for India. So you can keep an additional note for that, that whether the earlier epidemics which were not converted into pandemic is a possible reason for this kind of geographical biasness. Okay, so the second response is coming like this, that we need to take preemptive measure as the virus was novel. At least this particular interviewee knows that it was a very new kind of a virus, and certain preemptive measures must be taken. So you can assign a possible code like precaution. Then the third interviewee is saying that we need to build up a special centers to treat anyone infected. So now you are actually thinking, why special centers? Why not the normal hospital? So whether the interviewee, whether he or she is thinking about some kind of isolation of those patients who must be given special treatments in isolation from the rest. Okay, so you can assign a possible code called isolation. Like this, the last response, it can be like this: that I did not hear anything about COVID-19 in January, February 2020. So a possible code is ignorant. So lack of awareness, lack of, you can say lack of awareness. Additional note you can keep, probably information did not percolate, it did not feature in the media to that extent, probably it was not highlighted as a front page news. So somehow the interviewee is ignorant. So if you get a very sizable proportion that of interviewees who are ignorant in January and February 2020 about COVID-19 infection as a global pandemic, probably you can identify certain problems with the entire healthcare communication system. Anyway, this is just an example with the help of which you can proceed with your codification. But I would like to stress on the last column, that is the additional notes which are required. Actually, you must have additional notes. Now in most of the cases, the additional notes are basically known as issuing of memos. Okay, so we will be coming next to the memos. Okay, so let me just clear out the concept of code first. Now see, this I will show you how it takes place in Atlas TI, because today we will be focusing on Atlas TI. There are two issues with codes, or two technical you can say terminologies associated with codification. One is called the groundedness of the codes, and one is called the density of the code. Okay, now the groundedness refers to the number of connected quotations. Okay, so suppose you have 10 data inputs in the form of 10 case studies or 10 FGDs or 10 key informant interviews or 10 documentaries, movies, etc. Now, say in document in data number 1, say in case study 1, you have created a code against a particular quotation. Okay. Now that particular quotation is also coded with another code. Okay. So number of connected quotations to a particular code. So if we are using the same code to code a number of quotations across the number of data inputs. Suppose you have 10 data inputs, 10 case studies, and you have identified, say, 50 segments. Okay, you have identified 50 quotations, and out of those 50 quotations, say 10 quotations were coded with a single code or the same code. So the groundedness of this code will be 10. Okay, so number of connected quotations to a code is the measure of its groundedness. And then comes the density. Density is the linkage between two or more codes. Okay, so if a particular code X is connected with another code Y, its density is said to be 2. If the X is a standalone code, its density is said to be 1. If X is a let me just repeat this sentence. Suppose there is a code, you have issued a code X, and then you have issued a code Y. Okay, now if X is linked with Y, then the density of X will be 1 because X is linked with another code Y. If X is linked with two codes, say Y and Z, then the density of X will be 2 as X is linked with two other codes. Okay. Now, there can be standalone codes also. X is not linked with any other codes. X is a standalone code. So here the density of X will be 0. Okay. So that those are the two critical terminologies as far as the codes are concerned, assigning codes are concerned. One is the groundedness of the code. It refers to the number of connected quotations, and the second one is the density of the code, which basically links one code with other codes. Now comes the one of the most important part in qualitative data analysis, which is called the memos. Now, memos are very important because if I go back to this particular example, as I have kept the last column very much empty, and when I say additional notes, I mean to say whether you are attaching any memos with this. Okay, so memos are basically the theorizing write-up of ideas about codes and the relationships as they strike the the analyst while coding. So just focus on this last part of this sentence, as they strike the analyst while coding. So when the research scholar is actually coding that particular quotation or the segment in the data, if something comes in the researcher's mind and he or she feels, okay, I have coded it with a single word or a terminology or a phrase or a keyword or an observation or a concept thing, I need to elaborate this slightly more. I need to attach a memo with this because something very important comes in my mind. So you are basically theorizing right up of the ideas about the codes. So it is directly associated with that particular code when you are actually writing the code. So if you can fall back on certain previous information that you have gathered, or if you have access to certain articles or journal papers which are very important in connection with this particular codification, you can insert it as a memo. And memo is not restrictive. Okay, I will show you in Atlas TI. That memo does not mean that you have to write only one line or two lines or three lines. You can actually insert an entire journal paper as a memo if you feel that particular code, if I want to elaborate this particular journal paper, is the thing based on which I can elaborate this code, or I can justify this codification. Okay, so they are notes for oneself and notes about the notes. Okay, so they are notes for oneself, means notes for the research scholar, because the research scholar, while progressing onto the data analysis, and when he or she will be randomly coding, at the end of the day, probably you will find that you have 500, 600 codes, and it will be very difficult for you at a later stage to understand why I have given this code name against this particular segment, or against this particular quotation. What was the logic? So not the rationalization or the theorization of that particular codes, it must be documented properly. So my recommendation for every scholars who are engaging themselves in qualitative data analysis, the moment you are issuing a code for a particular segment, you should be very much focus on issuing a memo, or a conceptual write-up about this particular code. So memos are analytical and explanatory. They may be very small sentence, paragraphs, or few pages. That's why I have said that even if you are having an entire journal paper in your mind, which can be supportive of that particular code, you can actually insert that. So they may contain miniatures of the data, sometimes overview of the parts of the blocks of the data. So continuing with the memo, it may be treated as a personal or private note. Okay, they need not be based on rigorous logic. So whatever comes in your mind at the time of codification, you are just putting it on. You are just documenting it. So that is basically the idea of issuing a memo. And then we come to the themes, because this is the most important thing, and we are actually going through the thematic analysis process. Now the themes basically are the grouping of the codes. Okay, so how the grouping of the codes can be done on the basis of proximity, on the basis of similarity, on the basis of co-occurrences, on the basis of clustering, formation of a dendrogram. One who is very much acquainted with the quantitative process of cluster analysis, probably you know what dendrogram is. Follows agglomeration schedule to identify certain clusters. Okay, so the grouping of the codes is done on the basis of the similarity between the codes, the actual similarity between the quotations based on which the codifications have been done, similar kind of memos being associated with those particular codes, then to what extent the codes co-occur with each other. Okay, throughout that particular data input that you are accessing, and can you cluster those codes into specific kind of can you group those codes into specific clusters. So on the basis of that, the researcher would like to develop a pattern. So basically, when we talk about theme, the theme is developed on the basis of clustering or grouping of the codes, and based on the grouping of the codes, pattern is developed. So there comes the actual development of the themes. Now we come to the network. We talk about the concept mapping. The concept map is basically a schematic device for representing a set of concept meanings, which is embedded in a framework of propositions. That's a very theoretical idea, but in a concept mapping, we basically try to map the entire process into a single network, which will reveal how the codes, the memos, the additional notes, the quotations are interconnected with each other, because this interconnectedness or group formation will actually help us, or help the researcher to develop that pattern or to develop that theme. Okay, so in their most simplistic forms, the concept maps may link two concepts using a word. For example, snow and white are two concepts. Snow is white is a meaningful concept. Okay, so several sub concepts are clustered around the main concept. So when we perform a concept mapping, you will see that how this particularly mapping process take place. And you know, in mapping or networking, there are two issues. One is to develop a automated network which is based on the similarity of the codes. So whatever you have done, whatever input you have given to the software or to the application, they will try to develop the network on the basis of that input only. So that's a pretty automated kind of a mapping or a network. And the second network is on the basis of the interpretations, perception, conceptualization of the researcher, and that is called a semantic map. So all the semantic linkages are to be manually identified. Here also the machine will help you in identifying all the semantic linkages. And later on, what you can do is you can club these two maps together. One which has been automatically identified by the process on the basis of the inputs or the codes or the memos, etc., that you have created on the basis of the analysis that you have done. And the second one is your own interpretation of that entire data input, and you thought that these things are to be linked, or these things are in relationship with each other. Now, you can either merge it, or you can actually compare it whether they fit into a single concept map. Okay. So these are the various use of the concept maps. So this is a network structure that we are trying to look into. And now, before moving on to the hands-on exercise with Atlas TI, I will just give you a very brief introduction to Atlas TI. Some of the interfaces part to be shown, then we can proceed. So this is a brief introduction. So what kind of data we can import in Atlas TI? We can import the interviews, we can import the focus group, the observations, the case studies, images, video. These all we have discussed, audio, surveys, biographies, etc. And this is very important. Now, before proceeding for data analysis, you organize your project. Okay. You need to name your files very descriptively. Certain examples are given over here. Separate each interview, the survey respondent, the cluster, the field notes, etc., the case, etc. That can be done on the software platform itself. You can actually identify the document groups. Then organize in specific folders in computer and hard drive, and you can name the particular folder which can be easily accessed. Okay, so this is the preliminary activities, or you can say the homework or the ground activities before you can proceed to use the software. Okay, so you open the Atlas TI software. The initial window will show interface like this. Okay, so you have the option of creating a new project. So this is the key with the help of which you can create a new project. If there is already a project in your hard drive, you can import the project. If you are a collaborative researcher and a lot of things are stored in the cloud, you can import projects from the clouds also. Okay, so this is the initial interface of Atlas TI. And then we have a number of navigational platforms or ribbons. So you have a horizontal ribbon at the upper hand side. This is one. And on the left hand side, there is a vertical panel which is called the Project Navigator. And you will find that all the documents and the codes and the memos and the networks, the document groups, the code groups, the memo group, the network groups, the multimedia transcripts, whatever your tasks will be and whatever you will be doing, on this, using this platform, will be stored here and will be reflecting here. So if you are bringing in, say, 50 documents or 60 documents, you will find within this particular bracket the number, at this particular moment there is no document, so it's 0. The moment you will be bringing 10 documents, the number will be 10. The moment there will be 10 codes, the number will be 10. The moment there will be 10 memos, the number will be 10. So it will be pretty reflective of whatever you are doing in this particular main workspace. Okay, so there is a horizontal navigational ribbon, and there is a project navigator vertically aligned to the left hand side of the interface. And in the middle, we have the main workspace where all the data analysis, the data inputs will be open, and codification, etc., will be done over here. This is in detail the ribbon. So once we open that software, we can see it. So these are the search function. Then there are import and export. You can import directly from Twitter. So if you want to have a sentiment analysis using the Twitter data, you can use this particular button. You can use the reference manager to import document or data in this particular platform. You can use the survey platforms also. So you have a number of options. You can also export data if you want to have further analysis for SPSS, or you can easily export it to MS Excel. There is an analysis tab which basically measures the code co-occurrence table and the code document table. There is an intercoder mode. Now this is very important, but more often than not we do not use it actually. Intercoder mode basically is applicable when there is more than one researcher associated with the research. Now, when we conduct funded research, funded research is more or less a collaborative kind of a research. So there you can find more than one research. And what is most interesting about Atlas TI, and as a matter of fact, the other qualitative data analysis software, very interesting, that suppose you as a researcher, you are stationed in Kolkata or any other part of India, and your collaborator is located in, say, Taiwan or China or, say, US or anywhere in the European countries, and you can use the Atlas TI cloud for this intercoder operation. So what this intercoder mode enables, so once you click this, it enables the intercoder mode. That means what? Suppose a particular data you are coding, and at the same time your collaborator can also code that particular data. So this is very interesting, because probably you are thinking from one particular dimension, you are thinking from one particular angle. Your collaborator may come out with certain very interesting angles, certain very interesting inputs. So it will be a real-time codification by multiple coders, by multiple researchers, or by the collaborators. That's very interesting. But normally in our day-to-day research work, it's not used to that extent. Then we have a number of tools and support. We have the query tools, where a lot of Boolean operators are there. So these are all the elaboration, and these are certain references. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. Now we can just fall back to the hands-on part. Okay, so the full version of the Atlas TI unfortunately is loaded in another platform, but I can use the trial version over here. So I have the Atlas TI 8 with me. So this is the logo of Atlas TI 8, and fine. So I talked about the interface of the Atlas TI in our presentation. It looks like this. Okay, so I can create a new project. I have some of my own projects over here. At the very beginning, I will try to show you by creating a new project, and then I will use existing project, because if I start coding, it will take a lot of time. Okay, so I will use certain ready coded documents to explain how the several analysis takes place. Okay, so at the very beginning, let us just create a very small kind of a project. Okay, so over here, you see this particular tab called Create a New Project. So you just click it, and a small window will open, and they will ask you to provide or assign a name to this particular project. So say I am providing a name, say demo underscore say AKTG. So I have just given a project name very randomly, demo underscore AKDG, and then I just click create. Fine. So once that, if this particular window opens, that means your project has been successfully created. So at the very top, probably you can see the demo AKTG is created. This is the file. And if you go back to our presentation slides over here, probably you have seen that was the reason that I showed you beforehand how it looks. Now, if I come to the real software, you see this is the horizontal ribbon, horizontal navigation bar. It has the home. You can go for searching of the project. This is the analysis tools, all these intercoder modes and etc. This is import and export that we have seen, tools and support, and this is all the documents. This is the operational navigational part, where all the reflections of your work operation in the workspace will be reflected. So this is the basic workspace. So what we would like to do is, since this is a demo kind of a thing, so I would like to make a very short demo about certain selected documents. So let us just add certain documents. Okay. Now, if I want to bring the documents over here, I can do that by just adding the document. I can use this particular tab called Add Documents, and I can just use Add Files. So if I just click Add Files, it will add all different kind of files. It doesn't only necessarily include the PDF files. It also includes the video files, audio files, images, etc. Okay. Or if you want to import something from the reference manager, because these days we are using reference managers, isn't it? We use a lot of reference manager, in fact. So the reference manager that is you can say that can be recognized by this Atlas TI platform is the EndNote version. So whatever you will be saving, say for example, I'm just giving one example. Say I'm opening this Mendeley. Okay, Mendeley is again an open source smart referencing tool from Elsevier. So you see, this is actually empty. Okay, and I can what I can do is I can assign certain document over here, but I have already certain documents in one of my folders, and this is the folder where certain 2-3 documents maybe there, or more than that. Let the entire process complete, then yeah. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 documents in this particular folder. So what I can do is let me just select all these. Okay, and let me right click it. So what I'm just repeating the operation. You select, and then you can go for Control A. Okay, and all the documents will be selected. Then right click it, and you will find a number of options. You just scroll down, come to the export option. Fine, you click the export option. You select a particular space where it can be stored, say, in the desktop area. And now save as type. You see, by default, it will be saved as big text. So if I just go to the pull down menu, you see the last one, EndNote XML. Okay, so all these qualitative data analysis software, they recognize certain kind of formats. Like if you are using NVivo recognize this format, RIS. Okay, Research Information System. So I should be saving it in .RIS format. But here I am trying to save it as .xml format. This is the EndNote format. So I'm just clicking it and then I'm saving it. Okay, so saved. So it has been saved by the name my collection. Now I can close down the Mendeley. So over here you can see this my collection. In itself, you cannot open it with any kind of application other than the compatible application. So you go back to Atlas TI and you just click this reference manager. You click the browse option. I have stored it in the desktop. Go to the desktop. This is the my collection. You open it. Now, how would you like to, create the document group? At the initial stage, you do not want to create the document group because you are not sure about how the grouping can be done. But I want to store it on the basis of volume. Okay, then year, then issue, maybe the publisher, the edition. Okay, the first author and the co-author. I can just do the preliminary things. Import abstract as a document. I do not require this, and then I click on to import. Okay, so the process starts of importing. Now you can see on the left hand side the navigational panel that 4 documents have been imported. Now if I click this small triangle, you can see a very small triangle on the left hand side of this document icon. If I click this, you will find these 4 documents have been imported. Now how can I check whether the documents have been imported in a proper way? Now you see, I have imported the document in this way. I have imported by their name, by the year, and probably okay, it has been done with the help of author name and year. And at the back end, probably they have stored every details about its publication. Okay, they have been stored as document 1, D1, D2, D3, D4. Now, how can I see this document? You just simply double click it. The entire document will open over here. These workspace is very flexible. You can increase the size. You can read this entire document over here. You can code it, whatever you want to do, whatever analysis you want to do, you can do it over here. So this was an example of bringing or importing data, qualitative data through your smart managers. Okay, actually when we talk about qualitative data input, we normally do not use smart managers or reference managers. So reference managers are basically used for literature review only, because we store literatures and journal papers, other references, etc. on smart references. So let me just delete these documents. Now, when you are bringing a document for analysis or data for analysis, so you need to use this add doc. So in add documents, you click add files, and let us go to the desktop. I have a very small demo file for this particular session. So let me just import the PDF file first. So these are the PDF files. There are 6 PDF files. Oh, let us just import all of them together, or you can do it one by one, whatever. So let me see. It's adding documents. So you see, it has taken a few seconds to add all the documents. Now you see, if I go back to the original data input, see, I have actually used the journal papers as the data input because right now I do not have any qualitative data input with me. So just for try to understand the technicalities associated with the data analysis. These are treat these as data inputs, or say case studies or reports or surveys or interviews, whatever it is. So I have 6 data files, textual data in PDF format. I have 2 videos. Okay. So 2 video files are there and 3 images are there. So all total, I have 10 data inputs. So if I go back to it last year, see, this is my first document. This document is in the form of a video. Okay, so I can actually play this video over here. Okay, and on the basis of the content of this video, I can actually code it or issue memos, etc. Okay, so I can stop it. So this is the first document. This is the second one. The second document is basically a PDF document. It's a text, so you can go through all these texts. Okay. The third document is basically an image. Okay. This is the image. Then the fourth document is another image. The fifth document is another image. This is actually document 9. Then there is another data file in text format. Then we have another video file. The issue is you can see that all the data have been properly imported, and here in this particular space you will find it is stored. All these data, you can navigate through all those data. So you can just, for the time being, you can close all these data from here. So all these data can be closed. Now, the first task that we need to do is to go for the codes. Okay. Now, before going for the codes, I told you that I need to document. I need to group the documents. Okay. So this is a very important section of the software, which is called the manager. Okay. This particular part is called the manager. So you have a document manager, you have a quotation manager, you have a code manager, you have a memo manager, you have a network manager, you have a link manager. So all these managerial functions. So how you can manage the document or the codes or the memos or the networks or the quotations, etc., that can be triggered from this particular area. Okay, so let me open the document manager first. Fine. So now you can see already the document have been grouped. Okay, why the documents have been grouped? Because probably you can remember that we have given certain inputs for the smart referencing manager, and it is given a kind of an instruction to document the group on the basis of the authors and the publication type, etc. So let us just remove all these things, all these document group, the preconceived document group. Let us remove this. Okay, so now we do not have any group. Fine, but we have in our hand 3 distinct kind of documents. Okay, we have certain text documents, we have certain image documents, we have certain video documents. So say this image 1, image 2, and image 3. So we are selecting these three and we are just right clicking and we can assign a new group. Okay, so images. So data underscore images. So this is one group. So the moment we created that particular document group, this particular thing arrives in this particular panel. Okay, so if I click this, you will find the three images are in this particular group. Fine. So if I now go back to our document manager. Let us close down this one for the time being. Yeah. Now going back to the document manager, now we have two videos. One is challenges for tourism in post-COVID-19. This is one video, and sustainable tourism post-COVID-19. So you can easily understand that I am working on a particular theme. So I can assign a new group. So what will be that group? Data underscore videos. So we are actually treating these as data. So in real life, when the researchers will be having their real data input, we are actually replicating or imitating all the resources that we can gather across the internet as the data inputs over here. Simply to make you understand about the technicalities associated with this particular software or application and how does it function. Now, we have three image files, two video files, and we have five data files. So let us select all those data files. 3, 4 data files means the text. Okay, so new group, data underscore say text. Fine. Now we have created three groups on the basis of three formats of the data. One are purely text data. The second one is the image data, the graphical images or the pictures, and the third one is the video data. Now, this is very hypothetical. Only I want you to understand about the technicalities involved. Now, say for example, one scholar have conducted his field work or field study, or he or she has gathered data from two specific zones, okay, from two specific areas or two specific geolocations, okay, and I want to group those two geolocations. So this will be a very random task. I am just showing you the technicalities involved. Say for example, this one, this one, this one, and this one. These four are from, say, I am creating a new group. These four are from, say, zone 1. Okay, so I am creating this. So D5, D8, D11, D30. This is a very random selection and a very hypothetical selection, just to show the technicalities involved. And these four data, say suppose they were collected from zone 1. And as I have told you that this particular researchers have conducted research on two separate zones. So for the rest, that means 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15. 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14, and 15. These are the data which are coming from, say, zone 2. Right. So we have grouped the data, the qualitative data for our research, for our analysis, as per the zones from where those data are collected. Now, if the researcher is very much interested about the demographical analysis, if the researcher is very much interested about the demographical correlations between the codes, between the themes, between the memos, etc., he or she can easily assign groups as per the demographic. Say, for example, one of the demographical parameter is gender. Okay, again, let me be very hypothetical. Say document D5, D6, D7, D8, D9, and D10. These are basically, say, female respondents. Again, I am making just a hypothetical assumption. And D11, D12, D13, D14, and D15. These data are basically representing the male responses or coming from the male respondents. Okay, so I'm creating it. So now you can see in this document groups section, I have created how many groups? I have created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups, and I have I have segregated this entire data input on the basis of the formats in which the data have been incorporated in the form of images, text, and videos. So 3 primary document group. Then I have identified very randomly and very hypothetically, it has been segregated into 2 response groups on the basis of demographic parameter, that is gender. One is the female's respondent and male respondent. Then probably the scholar has done his or her research work and collected data from 2 very pre-designated zones, identified research areas. So one is zone 1 and one is zone 2. Zone 1 has 4 documents, zone 2 has 7 documents. Okay, so on the left hand side navigation panel, probably you can see, if you scroll down over here, you can follow my cursor, that in the document group you will find 7 document groups have been created. Now if I just click this small triangle, you will find all these document group over here. So whatever is here is reflected over here. As I've told you, that whatever you will be doing in this particular space, in this particular workspace, will be reflected in this, operational navigational portion. So let me just close it for the time being. Now, after grouping my documents, after classifying and clustering and sorting all the type of documents and then grouping them, let me go to the real task. The first task that we have in our hand is coding. Okay, so let me be very quick. And let me be very hypothetical in nature. You need to understand how codification is done. Okay, so basically this research, although I cannot term it as a full-fledged research, this is just a miniature version of a research idea. This particular research, I have an idea in my mind that one of the industries that has been worst hit in this COVID-19 is the tourism and hospitality. That is the worst possible hit industry, and obviously because of the fact that tourism industry is a network of several other ancillary industries, as a result of which this has been worst hit, particularly because of the groundedness of the aviation sector, the transportation, logistic, the hotel industry, the restaurant facilities, the individual workers, the service operators, etc. They are so badly affected by this particular pandemic. It will take a very concerted effort to actually recover, and still researchers are not yet sure that how much it will take to actually recover. So this particular small miniature version of the research is just trying to find out what are the recovery routes of tourism and hospitality industry in the post-COVID-19 scenario, or even during the COVID-19 scenario, what kind of tourism recovery, because we cannot shut down an entire industry and sit idly to let the pandemic end and then we can start. By that time, the industry will be a dead one. So that's the entire research objective, to identify the variables or the dimensions which will be very much essential for recovery scale to be designated for tourism recovery. Okay, so that is the idea. So whatever coding I will be doing, it will be related to that research objective. So let us open a particular document. This is a text document, and suppose this is the data that I have. Remember, we are not doing a literature review. We are doing qualitative data analysis. So consider this as a qualitative data. So either this is a case study, or this is a focus group interview, or a key informant interview. For the time being, say it is a FGI or a focus group interview. So over here, I will just randomly select and codify. So it has nothing to do with the content, actual content of this particular text. Okay. So how to code? That is the first thing. Okay. And before coding, there was a terminology that I use. It's called the quotation. Okay. The quotation that we have understood is a particular segment of a data. So if I consider it as a data, if I consider it is a FGI input, say for example, this particular paragraph of this entire data is very critical for me in terms of analysis, because it speaks about certain things which are in line or aligned with the research objective that is in my mind or the research objective that I am pursuing. Okay, so what you can do is simply, the way in which you are selecting a Word document, you just select this entire part. Okay, so you can see that two orange dots will appear at the very beginning. Unfortunately, it has taken from the last paragraph. So from this one, you will find two orange dots at the beginning of the selection and at the end of the selection. Okay, so this is my quotation. Fine. Now, how to code it? Okay, so I can code it with the help of two things. I can go to this horizontal bar, and I can actually click this open coding. Okay, and open coding will open a box, and you can assign a code, and then you can click create. Okay, so this is one process. The second process is, after selecting, you just click write. Okay, now once you click write, you will have the same option over here, open coding. Okay, so if you click again, the open coding will appear. Now let me randomly assign certain codes. Okay, so this particular segment is talking about recovery strategies. Okay, now it is not necessarily a fact that the same quotation cannot be coded with more than one code. Okay, so you can assign more than one code, whatever you feel deemed fit to explain or to extract the exact meaning of this particular segment within the data. You can go on assigning codes. So this portion talks about perhaps the recovery strategies, and say this portion is also giving us hint about the new normal, say tourism initiatives. This is the second code, and I can assign another code. Say it talks about sustainable tourism as a potential route to recover and sustain tourism. So now I am creating it. Now you see on the right hand side what has happened. This is the quotation. Okay, so if I deselect everything, now this particular blue bar that you can see, if I click this particular blue bar is covering the entire length of this particular paragraph. Okay, so the entire length of this particular paragraph in terms of its physical length will be represented by this one, this particular. So this is the quotation. So if I just click this, the quotation will be selected, and you can see that I have actually assigned 3 codes over here. Okay, 3 codes. Okay, so this particular quotation, this particular segment has been coded with 3 codes. Now, If I come to the this particular navigation panel, as I've told you that this will reflect everything what you do here. So just follow my cursor. I have highlighted this codes area. So how many codes? 3. Okay, it is now stating 3 because we have assigned 3 codes. Now if I click this triangle, you will find all these codes. So new normal tourism initiative, this is one. Recovery strategy, sustainable tourism. Now one important thing is, probably you can now recall that in our slide presentation, I talked about groundedness and density. Okay. Now over here, you can find that, say, for example, in the first code, or as a matter of fact, in the second and the third code also, within the bracket, there is 1 and 0. 1 and 0. So 1 is groundedness, 0 is density. So what one groundedness refers to, it refers to with how many quotations the code is linked with. So this particular code is linked with one quotation, so the groundedness is 1. This particular quotation code is not linked with any other codes. Or as a matter of fact, the second code is also not linked with the other 2. Or the third code is also not linked with the first and the second. As a result of which, the density over here is 0 for the time being. Okay, so the first thing that we have done is we have coded the first segment. So let us just randomly select another one. So say, for example, this is a very important, say, for example, as a researcher, I feel this portion is also important. I right click and go for open coding. I go for heritage and culture tourism as a recovery route. Okay, so I can code it, I can create it. Okay, so this paragraph, or this particular section of the qualitative data, it speaks about say the heritage and culture tourism. So probably in the focus group interview, when I have put a question in front of the interviewee that what will be the specific route, which specific route will be followed by the destinations to recover the tourism activity, probably he or she has replied or responded that heritage and culture will be playing a very critical role in reviving this. Okay, so we can also go for another open code. Say, for example, what will be that? Say, for example, say tourism recovery through destination branding. Okay, so I can create this. Now here comes one of the most interesting thing. Now you see I have created 5 codes. Fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have created 3 codes earlier, and I have created 2 new codes over here. Now, if I feel that the codes that I have created earlier, the 3 codes I have created earlier, it is also applicable for this section also. Like, for example, this section also talks about recovery strategies. Okay, probably you will remember or recall that one of the codes that we have used earlier is recovery strategies or new normal tourism initiatives. Now, these two are probably also very much applicable in this particular, because it also talks about the recovery strategies. It talks about a very specific strategy. That means it talks about heritage and culture tourism as a specific strategy, or it talks about destination branding as a specific strategy, but generically it is talking about the recovery strategy. So what we can do, we can use the same code, recovery strategy. We select this recovery strategy on the left hand side in the navigation panel and simply drag it and drop it over here. So over here you can see the recovery strategy is incorporated. Now, interestingly, if you come back over here and follow my cursor, that recovery strategy now has a groundedness of 2, because now the recovery strategy is associated with 2 quotations. Okay, fine. So probably this is also a part of a new normal recovery through new normal recovery initiatives. So that can be one of the things. Fine. So let me restrict myself with this much for this first document. Now let us open a video file. Okay, so let us see how to put a video file. Say, now this is the video file. Fine. So let us play it. Now you will find 2 important areas are there in the upper hand navigational area on this top ribbon. There is an option of marked position. It has only appeared because I have opened a video file. In case I open a document file or a text file, these options will never be there. Okay, so this playback section and this capture, snapshot, etc. This opens up the moment you open an audio or a video file. Okay, so what you can do is you can mark the position. You can see over here on the right hand side of this video panel, there is a frame by frame, distribution of the entire document, or frame by frame dissection of this entire video document. So you can actually mark your position. There is a cursor, you can actually pull it forward or pull it backward. Okay, so let us position my cursor here. Let us mark my position over here. Okay, now I can actually create a quotation. Say, for example, up to here, I am creating a quotation. So once I mark my position, say from here to here, I didn't hear what this speaker is saying. This is just an assumption, just an hypothetical example, but the technicalities are to be understood. That's why I am just doing this. So what I have done first, I have marked my position. There is a orange bar kind of here. This orange bar is very flexible. You can take it down. You can increase its size like this. Okay, so this is the entire quotation. Okay, this is the selected part, the way we are selecting the document. Okay, the text part. So we are creating a quotation like this. And once we are creating a quotation like this, I can create a quotation within a quotation. You see, I have created a small quotation within a big quotation. This is the big quotation. This is a smaller one. Now I want to assign certain codes. Okay, so for example, say I want to assign certain pre-listed codes. So probably the speaker is talking about the recovery strategy. Okay, so the recovery strategy over here, probably the speaker is talking about sustainable tourism in the smaller segment, in the smaller code. So when the speaker was talking about this is not the speaker. You can assume him as a interviewee. So when I asked a question about tourism recovery in the post-COVID-19 or during COVID-19 period, he has given me these 2 answers. What will be the recovery strategies, the broad recovery strategies, and probably the new normal initiatives. And then he spoke about the sustainable tourism. And additionally, probably if I add another code over here, say open coding, additionally, he has said responsible traveling. So this is a new code. Probably he has said that the visitors and the host community both are required to demonstrate enough responsibility. So the travel behavior should be very responsible enough, because now we have to follow certain health protocols, certain social norms, etc., which did not exist probably in the pre-COVID times. And similarly, the host community must be hospitable enough So because we have seen that during the COVID times, a lot of social stigma is in the air. So probably the host and the guest, their relationship needs to be normalized. Okay, so they probably this interviewee is speaking about responsible travel. So we have now coded video data. Probably this is an interview that I have recorded, or the scholar have recorded in a video mode. The same thing can be done for a audio file also. Unfortunately, I don't have access to an audio file, but in the audio file, what you will have this particular dissection. Okay, this particular dissection, this particular you can say the frame, and the process of selecting a position or marking a position from where you are starting the quotation and creating a quotation, the process is absolutely same what we have followed in this particular video file. So let us close it. Let us open an image file. Okay, so this is an image file. Now how to code it? Okay, now in case of image file also, we can code it with the help of simple selection tool. So if I select a this portion of this picture, okay, now you can see the selection has been done. All these orange dots are basically the peripheral area of the selection. And if I right click it, I can go for an open coding, declining tourism economy. See, since this is a snapshot of a beach, and you can see that since there is no one, so obviously it refers to a declination of the tourism economy, which is very important. And at the same time, we can highlight this particular portion, another portion, and we can use say responsible traveling. We can use sustainable tourism, because in this part, in these natural landscape, the sustainability or biodiversity preservation, etc., or minimal intervention with the natural environmental setup of biodiversity spread is expected. So let me just code it with two existing codes: sustainable tourism and responsible tourism. Okay, so let me just open another document. This is the COVID-19 and social media infodemic. And this is very critical, because we talk about infodemic means fake news, misinformation, gossips, rumors, suppression of facts, etc. This has become one of the features during the pandemic times. And how to misutilize certain platform, we have learned how to litter interactive platform, how to throw garbages into interactive platform. We have learned basically for the last 1.5 years, and it is irrespective of the profile of the people who are using it. We have seen the most learned people or so-called educated people littering across this social media with infodemics. So this probably is one of the data inputs whereby one very important element has come forward, that is very important for probably for the tourism recovery. And say this particular segment that I have selected, this particular quotation that I have selected is speaking about, I'm going for the open coding, it is speaking about use of social media in tourism recovery. Okay, and I want to just add another code over here, that is propagation of actual images. Okay, use of authentic content. Okay, so for example, these three can be the new codes, but it is talking about use of social media in tourism recovery. So I can use an old code also because it is talking about the recovery strategy. Okay, so that is a very general code, recovery strategy, and the specific strategy is use of social media in tourism recovery in post-COVID scenario. So I can use another existing code which is talking about new normal tourism initiatives. Okay, and we can use the heritage and culture tourism as a recovery route, and social media can be used to do that. So three existing codes can be used to uh, for this particular segment. So let's just close it. Let me just code one more before moving to the next set of action. Now, this is an input, data input, and this is about the travel risk perception. So perhaps the interviewee is very much, you can say, afraid or under certain fear psychosis or under certain apprehensions or under certain uncertainties about traveling. Okay, because if you cannot remove this sense of fear, or if you cannot neutralize this risk perception from the mind of the travelers, the prospective visitors or the prospective tourists, it will be almost impossible for the tourism industry to recover. So two kinds of fear is propagating. If you are a tourism researcher, probably you know that there are two kinds of phobias which are intersecting with each other. One is called a hodophobia, HODOPHOBIA. Hodophobia basically represents irrational reason for traveling, irrational reasons not to travel. Okay, so there is no rational reasons why I'm not traveling, but there at the back of my mind, something is playing, certain risk perception is playing, which is not allowing me to travel. Even if somebody is saying that, well, our area is free of contamination, free of contagion, free of infection, and we have taken every healthcare measures. You can freely visit our place. Even then, there are certain restrictions. There are certain mind blockages. So that is hodophobia. And then we have a xenophobia, the xenophobic attitude of the host community. The host community is very aggrieved about the visitors visiting their places, and they feel that, okay, the visitors are the people who are bringing all the infection from outside. So this is a risk perception. So let us randomly code it again. So probably this one, this particular part, I'm going for an open coding. Say risk of traveling. This is one code. Probably it is coming from, say, infodemia. Okay, fine. Now, see, risk of traveling. Since I have coded it here, now I want to explain, or I want to attach a memo with this risk of traveling. So what I can do is, I have talked about the memo. So I told you, the moment a particular researcher is coding, is going for coding, they should attach certain memos or certain notes with it. Till now, I haven't done it, but when I'm talking about the risk of traveling, I am very much interested to go for assigning a memo in this regard. So I go to home, and over here at the upper hand ribbon, you will find there is an option of new entities. You click this new entities, and you will find three options: new codes, new memo, new network. So you just click new memo, and you just name it, say memo 1, and create it. As I've told you, that there will be no limitation of creating a memo. So you see you can paste a whole article here. So you may not restrict yourself in a single line, but risk perception. So The risk perception, I'm writing just a memo for myself so that I can fall back at a later stage for evaluation of this particular memo. Risk perception may evolve from, say, from fake news or falsification of information shared across social media. Okay, and I can attach one more thing. I can ask a question for myself. Say, what could be, say, could be the strategies for the DMOs. Now, DMO is a technical term. It is basically the destination marketing organization. So, what will be the strategies for the DMOs to neutralize the risk perception using the social media? Okay, so this is the question that I'm asking to myself. Okay, so what would be the strategy? Now, this is probably the managerial implication for my findings of my research output. Okay, so what will be the industry response, the destination marketing organization, how they can use the social media to neutralize this risk perception in the mind of the traveler. The risk perception basically is the mental blockage that inhibits a prospective traveler from traveling. Okay, so this is a memo. One is the risk perception may evolve from the fake news, falsification of infodemic shared across the social media, and what strategies the DMOs can take. So after writing this memo, you can go on and write an entire paragraph or 1 or 2 pages. Take your time. This is just an example. So once you are completed with this memo writing, on the left hand corner, top corner, you will find a save button. So you just save it. Fine, the memo is saved. You can close the memo and you can just navigate to this particular part on the navigational panel. You will find that there is one memo. Okay, but you see, it is 0 0 within bracket 0 0. So groundedness is 0 and the density of the memo is also 0. Groundedness is 0 because the memo as of now is a free memo. That means it is not associated with any quotation. You see, over here I have created the memo with an understanding that this risk, when I was tempted to create a memo, the moment I have coded this particular part with the risk of traveling, at that particular moment it came into my mind that I need to elaborate this part. So that memo has been created, but it is not associated or attached with this particular quotation. So what you can do is select this particular memo and just drag and drop it over here. Okay, now you see, now the memo is associated with this particular quotation. Okay, now you can see over here also in the navigational panel that memo has a groundedness of 1. That means it is actually coded. It is actually linked with at least one quotation. Okay, so that is the what we say what we say is the memo and attaching the memo with a particular quotation. Fine. So since we have very limited time for today's session, let me just restrict myself over here as far as the coding is concerned, and let us go to the code manager over here. As I've told you, this is the managerial section. Initially we had the document manager, we created the document group. Now we will open the code manager. Okay, so let us double click it and you will find that these codes have been created. So how many codes we have created? Actually 12 codes. So all the 12 codes are here. Now interestingly, you will find that the groundedness of the codes are there. So you have 2, you have 4, you have 1, you have 3, so different levels of groundedness, but the densities are 0. because neither of these codes are linked with each other. Okay, now how to link one code with another? Okay, suppose recovery strategy is closely related with the new normal tourism initiative. Okay, recovery strategies and new normal tourism initiative. So say the new normal tourism initiative, you select it and you just drag it onto this recovery strategy. Okay, so what I have done, I have selected the new normal tourism initiative and have dragged it on this recovery strategy and have left it. Now, this is the most interesting thing that the software will support you. Now, how these two codes are related with each other? Okay, now the software is saying whether they contradict each other or whether it is a property of one another, is associated with, is a cause of, is a part of. In this case, new normal initiative is a part of recovery strategy. Okay, so now you can see the new normal tourism initiative is having a density of 1 because it is associated with another code, and so is the recovery strategy, it is having a density of 1. Okay, so say for example, infodemia and use of authentic content contradicts. So whenever there is authenticity of content, there cannot be any infodemic kind of situation. So infodemia exists because there is a lack of authentic content. Okay, so it contradicts. So say for example, heritage and culture tourism as recovery route. This can be a new normal initiative, new normal tourism initiative. It can be is associated with a new normal tourism initiative. So you can say tourism recovery through destination branding. It can improve tourism economy. So is a cause of, it can improve tourism economy. So you can see in these way codes can be linked, and as a result of which we can get the density of the codes. Fine. Now we have opened this particular code manager to group codes, okay, to identify the groups of the codes, because when we are developing the themes, basically we are trying to group the codes. Okay, so that is the first step in thematic development or theme development or pattern development. So recovery strategies, then new normal tourism initiatives, heritage and cultural tourism as a recovery route, sustainable tourism, then tourism recovery through destination branding. Probably these are all, you can say, a new group. We can say they are all talking about recovery. Okay, so we have a code group which consists of 5 codes, which is talking about recovery. Fine. Use of social media in tourism recovery, use of authentic content, propagation of actual images, containment of infodemia. Then we can create a new group, say UGC, the user generated content. In user generated content in formulating recovery strategies. Fine. So we are creating this second group. Fine. Sustainable tourism, heritage and culture tourism. So these can be created in a new group. Probably it is talking about the resilience and recovery. Fine. Responsible traveling, new normal initiative, it's sustainable tourism. This is talking about, say, for example, responsible tourism. Okay, so I'm creating the fourth one. And then risk of traveling, declining of tourism economy, infodemia. These are a new group, perceived risk of travel. Okay, so we have just randomly identified certain code groups. So how many code groups we have identified? Over here you will find on the navigational panel on the left hand side, over here 5 code groups have been identified. So if you click this small triangle, you will find this 5 code groups. Fine. Now after doing this codification, assigning memo, document groups, creating document groups, and creating the network code groups. So the next thing that is very much essential is to visualize the network, and that is the most important thing for us also. That we now want to visualize the pattern that has been developed, the theme that has evolved. So let us visualize the theme. So again, go to this new entity and you click onto the new network. So let me just name it network 1. Okay, so create it. Fine. So this is network 1. As I have told you, that networks can be of 2 types, or the linkages in the networks can be of 2 types. One is the manual linkages or the semantic linkage. The semantic linkage is created by the researcher by virtue of his or her own thought process, own perception, own inputs, own creation, own perception, you can say. Whatever the inputs is coming from the researcher's own mindset about the research problem or the research objective or the data analysis. Okay, and the second thing is automatically done or with the help of this particular, or with the help of the software. And let us first take a look into the automated one, and then we can go for the semantic one. So let us restrict ourselves to the automated network for today, and tomorrow we can just continue from here and we can see the semantic linkage. So this will be the last one, the network analysis. Tomorrow I will go for this analysis part, the code document table and code co-occurrence table, before proceeding for QDA minus. So now this is the network workspace. So what I can do is I can drag any code. Say on the left hand panel you will have all these codes. We have 12 codes. So randomly I am dragging a code, say recovery strategy. That is our pivotal, you can say, that is the main focal area of this particular research, and we can assign a color to it. Say I'm coloring it. Fine. So this is the recovery strategy. Now you can just blow up this particular window. So we have one particular code over here. Okay, now I want to see that how this code is associated with other codes and quotations, so that a formal theme or pattern is being visualized by the scholar or by me. So what you can do is you just click onto this code, you just right click it, and you go to this particular add neighbors, and to minimize the effort, if you do not want to be very specific, that you want to bring in all the codes first, then all the memos, then all the quotations, etc., I want to be very general and I want to bring all common associated with this particular code. So I just click onto all common. Now you see that all the quotations associated with this particular code have been automatically drawn. Now I can change the layout for better visibility. So let us select orthogonal tree. Now you can see gradually a pattern, a theme is being developed. So the recovery strategy that I am thinking of, it is bringing all these codes into place, and it is bringing another new quotation also. Let me see that whether this particular code is associated with any other thing. Okay, I have found 2 more. So let us organize the layout once more. It changes. Fine. It has given another code. So let me see whether it has anything common associated with it. No, fine. So in this particular pattern, in the recovery strategy, I have recovery strategy, the New Normal Tourism Initiative as a part of the recovery strategy, and heritage and culture tourism as a recovery route, which is associated with, is a part of. Okay, now as I have told you that I can have a semantic linkage also, and I told you that I will doing this thing tomorrow, this particular network, but I'm just giving you a small demo of that so that you can see. This is the automated linkage that the machine algorithm has identified, or the backend algorithm process of the software has identified, based on the proximity and the similarity of the codes and the similarity of the quotations, associationship between the different quotations, etc. Now, say the recovery strategy and infodemia. I am just dragging this infodemia over here. Let me just color it with a different color. See this infodemia. Okay. Now I want to just attach infodemia with recovery strategy. Okay. Now infodemia is basically contradicts the recovery strategy. So when I'm to interpret as a researcher, this is a semantic linkage that the researcher is doing, that the researcher's perception is incorporated over here. The researcher, by virtue of the analysis of the data which he or she has accumulated, he or she has found that misinformation, fake news, falsification of information, gossips, and rumors are basically contradicting all the recovery strategies. Not actually it contradicts, but it hampers the recovery strategy, because one of the recovery strategy, if I draw another code over here, risk of traveling, okay, and if I just attach it with this, the risk of traveling is associated with or is a part of the recovery strategy. So one of the recovery strategy should aim at minimizing the risk. Okay, so we have a automated kind of a network, and within that automated network, we have incorporated two semantic linkages. These two semantic linkages are basically coming from the researcher's own input. Okay, so I can just go for an organic routing. You can design this particular routing as per your choice. You have a lot of layouts to select from. So if I want to, if I am writing a journal paper and I have analyzed the data and I've come up out with this particular pattern which has emerged from the qualitative data analysis, I can actually export this as a bitmap, or export it as an XPS. We can export this as a bitmap. So bitmap is an image. So in the desktop, network 1, so I'm saving it. So just close it, and if I go to my desktop, you will find this network 1 is over here. And now I can actually copy it and insert it in my journal paper to make the analysis more visible, the visualization of the analysis. Okay, so let us stop here, and we can continue in the next class. Okay, so